So one of the things that makes IT departments very challenging, especially if they've been around for a while, where you've gone through a lot of growth, is you tend to have heroes within the organization, specific IT individuals that know one specific application that nobody else knows, or is the person you always have to call to solve those problems. And as we've tried to mature organizations at various clients, the first problem I've always had is identifying those people. Have you been able to find those people?
Yeah, I think they make themselves known pretty much right away. You understand, because problems are going to happen. Things go down. Who can fix it? That guy can fix it. The hero. Find the hero. The heroes, they rise up, they attack the problem, they fix it. Can anybody else resolve the problem? Maybe, but not as good as the hero.
What I've seen is that the hero doesn't want to give up control. They like being the center of attention. They've built, because if you're the natural type of individual that wants to teach everybody around you, you avoid being the hero because you spread your knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason why they are the hero and how they became the hero. You know, they like that. They're not necessarily ones to share the information. Here's how I fix problems. Here's how I go about this work, and rise other people up alongside them. They like having that control, that power, that understanding, that deep understanding of the system, and having people depend on them. They're more important. There's some job security, mindset that goes into that, and they feel important.
Is there any, from an infrastructure standpoint, I don't want to say it's justifiable, but they always tend to be the people that know that 20-year-old system that's buried in the basement, that the new people that join the team just don't want to take the time and energy to learn.
Well, I think from an infrastructure, looking at sheer numbers, right? The development staff, the app dev teams, there seems to be a lot more of those resources than there are maybe the infrastructure guys. And
we always get the fuzzy.
But I also think fear plays a lot into it too, right? Because
on the infrastructure side, or
on both sides, right? So with the infrastructure, you've got brittle systems. There's one or two people that know them, are comfortable and willing to make a change and willing to take that risk, and everybody else has got alligator arms and wants to back away. And for whatever reason, the one, let's go to Joe because Joe knows how to fix it. Joe knows the magic to make it work, and he's trusted, right? And usually Joe delivers.
But from an organization standpoint, that's a huge risk.
It is.
If Joe quits, Joe gets hit by a milk truck, whatever it is, suddenly we don't have that skill. So from building out an organization, IT organization, which we've talked about before, how do you plan both from a development and all of our departments to avoid that hero position?
I think you have to make their knowledge known across the team and shared, right? So, I would start with documenting whatever it is, the secret sauce that they have, and making it common for other people. And then when Joe goes to fix something, I would pair Joe up with someone else and make them do the work and make Joe teach them. He's looking over their shoulder, but he needs to start teaching other people how to do things. And that's how you get it shared out. And with development, it typically manifests itself when a deadline is looming, right? There's one guy in the team that's Superman that will step up and take on more responsibility than he should to get it over the finish line. And everyone else kind of backs away and lets, him or her do his thing to get it over the finish line. And from my perspective, it's harder to fix that because you need to get the work done. It's getting done. Typically what I see is people aren't willing to take the risk of missing the deadline because that's what has to happen, right? To get out.
It's even more impactful in infrastructure because we're not missing a deadline. We're restoring production systems or making a critical change, while the systems are all up and running. And I've tried those methods where you try to make them, you sit there and show the other person how to do it. And that, if you've got somebody that really wants to it, that he's ended up or she in this hole where they don't want to be, they recognize the hero, they want to go do something else. The cloud's actually been a good catalyst for some of those guys. Hey, let's go show you the new stuff, but you can't go do the new stuff until you pass off some of your current responsibilities. But I've also had situations where you almost have to threaten the person that you have to give this up because of the job security. They're like, well, this makes me important to the company. Like, no, it makes you a liability. It makes you, I want to fire you or move you to an entirely different job so that someone else has to learn because that single point of failure is just too risky.
But then you have to show that person, okay, you are important to the business. It's critical. let's have you doing something different
Absolutely.
to,
But you got to
and thin that out.
I've seen you got to kind of have that shock of that it's not good, and really explaining the business risk, explaining the single points of failure, and giving them a vision of the future. Usually, those guys they're very, I'm in charge. This system has to be up. It is 100% my job, but it's not. We're an ecosystem. Everybody's got to get it done.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that responsibility falls upon leadership.
Absolutely.
You either enable that practice to happen and for heroes to prop up, or you emphasize the need to share that knowledge and responsibility across the other team members. You want to be able to hold people accountable and responsible for the work that they're supposed to be doing. And the idea of I agree with what Lysander said around documentation, having processes in place, having that paired programming perspective as well, people working with other people and trying to enforce or emphasize the sharing of that knowledge. But in the end, I think from a management or leadership perspective, you have to impress upon the people that this is not always going to be your job. Your job is going to shift, and some of that cross training that you would maybe implement it within your team so that you can have I don't want to say more heroes, but more people understanding more of the other jobs or more of the heroes' responsibilities, and then you have a smarter team as just one or two individuals.
Do you think is there a management structure that allows or encourages hero growth?
A specific structure? I don't think so.
I was thinking like if infrastructure rolled under dev, or if the whole IT organization rolled under CFO, where they weren't really seeing the problems, they weren't looking forward to a stable, happy ecosystem.
No, I think regardless of structure, that hero mentality or scenario would still be possible. It would still happen. And I think it's just making sure that those in management and leadership roles do what they can to make sure that if I have a team of heroes, that's one thing. If I have just specifically one or two people that just are the heroes, that's very different. So from a leadership perspective, I want to make sure that the few heroes that I have, that knowledge is shared across more members of the team. So I can look at it as more of a super group, I guess. And I have a bunch of smart people, a bunch of heroes, as opposed to one or two that always has to do the job because they're the only ones with the knowledge to do so.
Now, I would look at the culture of the business, right? I think a culture where everyone feels empowered, everyone feels like they're responsible for the quality of what they're doing. The likelihood of a few heroes appearing there is less, but if you're unorganized or everything's last minute and it's chaos, you're always going to have one or two people that know what they're doing, and they're going to feel like, okay, we can't let this fail. I'm going to take this on and solve it. And for whatever reason, the rest of the folks will stand around and watch. I think it goes back to the culture, and the leaders need to look at what the culture is and work to fix that so that it's shared across more people than what it is, and stop doing the things that cause you to, rely on the hero, right? I mean, we've all worked on projects that were late for whatever reason, or, infrastructure hasn't had the love and care that it needs. Shocker, right?
Right.
But you got to start to work to fix that, and that's something you got to ingrain in your people.
Yeah, I'd say one of the things from a culture perspective that kind of jives with what we at Prime talk about a lot, bias for action, right? Bias for action, a favor towards action versus inaction, and making sure that people are empowered. You talked about that too. People and teams are empowered to make those decisions. So the people that are holding back and watching others do the work, they themselves need to feel a little bit more empowered to either make decisions, do the work, step up, work alongside the people doing the work, and become valuable team members.
I've seen it also erode teams. So when you've got a couple of heroes in an environment, you're like, we need to expand. We go hire people. We go get super talented people from the outside. We bring them in. They get very frustrated because the heroes don't show them the ropes. They don't teach them what's going on. They don't really explain it. There's no great documentation. And your new talent that you bring in leaves, which just reinforces the hero's position within the company.
I'd still say that it goes back to, leadership and
Culture.
what they, and really it's incumbent upon a leadership to actually make sure that stuff doesn't happen, or to make sure it erodes over time. Right? We want to make sure that certainly the new people that we bring into the fold, we retain them. Right? The people that are there, we build them up and bring everybody to the same great level as opposed to just one or two of those people.
And leaders need to set expectations, right? So, I mean, when we're, on some of the projects that we're staffing up, we need to make sure that the folks we're bringing on that we expect to fix this problem understand that, hey, this is what the problem is. I need you to fix the technical stuff, but I also need you to help me with the rest of the people on your team. You can't do everything yourself. And that may mean things take a little longer than we would like them to, but if they can help solve that problem over time, things will get better.
And if you communicate that you're going to be slow early, tell people we're okay with it. It's better long term.
Yep.
Everybody to get up to speed rather than send John or Joe down a rabbit hole and have them do it and not explain it.
But that's where, as leaders too, we need to make sure that the people we're reporting to understand that that's what's going to happen. And when the leaders of the company talk to rank and file, that they're saying the same thing that we're saying, right? Because if they hear that from the executive team, they'll feel more comfortable going slower and in some ways taking more risk, knowing that they're not going to get beat up if things don't go well.
Yeah, setting the expectations is key because you go back to the deadlines or due dates for any type of work, project work, and the closer you get to that time frame, the more likely the heroes start to pop up, and you fall right back into that hero mentality. And maybe some of the good work you've done all up to that time and not having that hero situation occur is now happening again. So leadership has got to do what they can to make sure that the situation is right, position the people for success, and that things like that, although they do happen, it's reasonable that things like that will happen. Just make sure that we minimize it.
And then I also think you have to, when you ask your heroes to do this work, make sure it's something that they're willing to do, right? Because if you're asking somebody to do something they're not willing to do, the chances of them doing it well are next to none.
Asking the heroes to do the hero work? Or
No, asking them to help you solve the problem, right? They're going to be more than happy to do the hero work.
Right, but I think that's key to getting them to move forward, is to get them in the boat with them and show them the way forward and other technologies, other places they can add.
Right, but there's some people that are really, really great at doing the tactical work, but they're not good teachers.
Absolutely.
And if they don't know that they're not a good teacher or willing to commit to being a teacher, they may say, yeah, I'll do that, but then they just fall back into their comfort zone. And
right. I've found heroes typically are bad teachers, which is why I've always sort of used the carrot of other technologies they can work on.